You've just finished the HiLow recipe. We're going to go over it one more time, just to go over the concepts we've learned. Let's start with line 1. Now, creating a new line and typing MB and control space will bring up message box. Now, to choose it, you press enter and put a dot between words. We're going to choose ask for numerical input because that's the kind of input we want for this game. Now it's asking us for a message in quotes. How about, what is your guess? Then we need a semicolon at the end of the line. We're ready to run it. Okay, great, it works. We can delete the first line. The next line says, play a bell. Now, we can't use the tortoise for this because the tortoise can't make noise, so we're going to use something called sounds. It doesn't have a play a bell, but it gets close. Let's play a beep. And let's run that. Great, we can delete that line. Line 3 is going to involve the use of another message box. But this time we're going to show a message. In quotes, let's say, you won. Alright, let's run that. Great. We can delete that line and move on. This next line is going to introduce something new. Line 4 is going to need an if. So let's type if and control space. This is the correct choice, so we can press enter. Now it asks for a condition, as in if whatever the thing is, then do something. So our condition is if the guess is correct. However, there's nothing on here yet that says anything about guess or correct. I know how we can make the guess though. Let's select line 12 and right-click Refactor. We're going to extract it as a local variable. Let's call it guess. Now we have our guess. So instead of putting condition in the parentheses, we can now write guess. Great. I've got the easy part done out of this translation, but I don't know what to do about correct. For now, I guess I'll just fake it. Let's say if guess equals 40. If guess equals 40. Okay, so Java wants 2 equals here, because on line 12 we just said what guess equals. 2 equals means that guess is equivalent to something. Like guess could equal 4, but it could be equivalent to 2 plus 2. Alright, let's run this. Great, but we can't delete line 4 yet because it has just empty mustaches in that if. So let's select line 17s and 18. If we use Alt up, we can move them inside the mustaches. If we run this again, and guess something other than 40, nothing will happen. We can't delete line 4 because we still have it faked. Okay, let's still move on to line 5, keeping in mind that line 4 is still not done. Line 5 says we need to tell the end user something, so we're going to need a message box again. And we're telling, so it's going to be a show message. How about in quotes we say, too high? If we run that and guess 41, it'll say too high. We can delete that line. Line 6 has this new word, otherwise. Now, we can't use a plain old if for that because it doesn't say if. So we're going to use something new called else if. It's like an if, but it uses the information from the original if in its decision making. Instead of the condition in parentheses, we can say guess is greater than 40. Keep in mind we're still faking. And we need to move the line below into the mustaches. Alright, let's run it. Great. We can't delete line 6 because we're not done faking yet. Line 7 says to tell the end user that it is too low, so we're going to need another message box. And yeah, we can just copy line 23. If we run that, no matter what number, it's going to say too low. Great, we can delete line 7. Line 8 says otherwise if the guess is too low. You would think that you would use another else if here, but it'd be easier to just use else. Remember to move the line into the mustaches. Now we can run that and see if it works. Great. We can delete line 8 because we're not faking. Just a reminder, an if checks whether something is true and says something back if it is. It looks like this. See, the if gets translated to the word if, and if the guess is correct gets translated to the guess is equivalent to the answer. And whatever goes in between the mustaches is going to be affected by that if. For example, it looks like this. There are 3 types of conditionals: if, else if, and else. If doesn't depend on anything. It just checks whether something is true or not. Else if depends on the first if and checks whether something is true or not. Else is basically whatever's left. Great, we can move on to line 9. Oh look, it says do the following, so we're gonna need a 4. Let's replace stop with 8 and move the lower mustache down to the end. There. Let's run that to see if it works. Let's guess 40. But you see, It's still going to keep doing this 8 times because we told it to. We never said stop. However, we can delete line 9. Now line 10 just says 2 things, and exit. So, this may be a little weird, but we can just figure that out by saying break. And it looks like we have some red. Let's hover over that and see what the problem is. Java was freaking out because it didn't know when to break. So let's put that break inside the if mustaches. Great, let's run it. If we guess 40, this should end. It works. We can delete line 10. Line 11 says to tell the user they've lost the game, so we're going to need another message box. We're going to need to use show message, and in quotes say something along the lines of "you lost." Alright, let's run it. Even if we win, it should say we lost. Let's guess 40. Great, that works. We can delete line 11. Line 12 says if, so we're going to need another if. Now, you may be wondering, what do we put in place of condition? Now, after we move the message box into the if brackets, it'll show that message if whatever this condition is met. What would make the user lose if after 8 times they haven't guessed correctly? And to show how many times we've gotten to, we need to use the variable I, because that's the number of times the for loop runs. So if I is equivalent to 8, 2 equals, then the message box should show the "you lost." But it's not, because the for loop bracket should be around the if. Our error message is saying that Java doesn't know what this weird thing I is called. That's because the for loop ended 1 line up, so we need to move the if into the for loop. Java starts ignoring things after they end. We're going to use Alt up, and there you have it. The red went away. Let's run this. Let's guess 40. Great, it no longer shows the "you lost." We can delete line 12. Let's go to line number 13. It wants us to choose a random number between 1 and 100. How are we going to do that? Now, remember, we'd been faking all the ifs below. So let's highlight our fake, which was the 40, and right-click refactor. We're going to extract it as a local variable, which we're going to call answer. Great. Let's move it out of the for. Now, that's not a random number, but we need to test it out to see if this program still works. Let's run it. Great. Now let's run it again. That shows it works either way. We can lose the game or win the game correctly. And we can delete the other lines now that we're done faking them. Now we can replace the 40. Now that we've seen it work with 40, let's try a different number. You can have your pair turn around, then have them play the game without knowing the number. Let's guess 50. How about 20? How about 10? Okay. 15? Between 10 and 15. Let's try 12. Okay. 11. Great, we got it. Keep trying the game with different numbers. You can switch off. And we can delete this line. Great. Now that we've got the concepts in HiLow down, if you want to learn more, just go to teachingkidsprogramming.org.